Hi, good afternoon, everyone. So I'm going to tell you all about the project. I know the session is officially called UPIC-driven Solutions to Climate Resiliency in Atsalugpiaq, or Atsalugpiaq, which is a UPIC name for Rubus chamaemorus. It's also called salmon berries or cloudberries, bake apples. It really depends. Sometimes I use the words interchangeably. Most often I use Rubus chamaemorus as sort of like the quick and easy scientific name. I'm a plant scientist, that's background. Trained plant geneticist and physiologist, so that's a really big portion of the research. It's kind of like grounding Western science within indigenous methodologies and epistemologies. So I'll talk a little bit more about that as well. So slide. Okay, yeah. So even more background, actually, this project started in 2022 and joined until 2024, where Lynn Church, who's up in that top right-hand corner for you all, she sought out a collaboration with the USDA, and she was really interested in understanding with her whole community, Quinhagak, which is actually in Southwest Alaska. They really wanted to be able to expand research capacity in Quinhagak, gearing toward a really culturally important resource, which is salmon berries. And so, there's other members of the team as well. Dr. Claire Frederickson, who's a USDA employee, but to be here today, unfortunately, due to federal government regulations, she's no longer able to travel. Dr. Sean Gleason, who also works with Nalaquq with Lynn Church. He's also a communications professor. And Jacki Cleveland, and these names kind of got cut off on Google Slides. So you guys will see the nicer version in the end. But that is the broader team, and we're really looking at sort of how climate change is impacting the growth, the habitat, and sort of future production and harvest potential of Rubus chamaemorus. And there's 4 different areas that we're kind of grounding this research in: culture, economics, environment, and technology, because we know that climate change happens much more rapidly at 2 times the rate of what occurs in the lower 48 and actually the rest of the world. When we look at the Arctic Circle, there's 2 times higher increase in temperature here than elsewhere. And we also know that working in a subsistence food, that culture is really important. The traditions surrounding it, the stories that people tell, those are all very integral to understanding it today and also for the future. In thinking about that sort of indigenous research epistemology, there's pretty much 3 different tenets. I'm gonna butcher these words. They're all in UPIC, but Yuuyaraq, which is the way of life, and that's kind of like that beginning feature of it. And then the Elikut, which is community outreach. So again, the stories that people tell, how it actually truly impacts the research. And then this bottom word here that I won't try to butcher too much, but that's actually their understanding of Western science. And so this research has sort of an intertwining of each of these 3 facets, and we continuously try to feed into them and understand, because at the base of this project is community created, community driven, and community sustained. And without that sort of feedback mechanism, the project kind of falls apart, because we want to make sure that we're creating useful outputs ultimately to the community, something that they actually want, and not something that a Western science person kind of comes in and says this is what is needed. Slide, please. And so we defined a few research questions with Nalaquq, which is the Native corporation that is affiliated with the Quinhagak community. And so again, kind of looking back at these 4 different sort of tenets: the technology, environment, culture, and economics. I'm going to focus just on 2 of these research questions today, just for the sake of time. But there's also, one thing about food agency and culture that my boss, Dr. Claire Frederickson, is able to kind of speak to a little bit with her research. So I'll kind of touch on that a little bit as well. But those 2 main questions: how can remote sensing be used to predict the productivity and monitor the health of Rubus chamaemorus? And then secondarily, what are those potential impacts of climate change to food safety and food quality on Rubus chamaemorus, and how much has that changed over time as well? Slide. Is Lynn there? It says, I think she said it's loading. I'm not sure if she's on. Maybe.
I can let you know when she joins, and we can maybe go back.
Yeah, we'll do it that way. So you'll hear from Lynn. But really importantly, Nalaquq, they have built a ton of workforce development, and they've done a lot of workforce development in Quinhagak, specifically with remote sensing. So remote sensing isn't just out of nowhere. They've done a lot of search and rescue training on drones, specifically with Dio and previously on DJI platforms. So the community knows how to use drones, and they use them extensively, and they get excited about it because it directly relates to some like traditional knowledge about birds and having a bird's eye view of the tundra. So she says it's loading still, or like she's early to the session.
I'm gonna see if maybe she's in the wrong room.
Okay.
Just
Yeah, but I'll keep it rolling. Just so
the harbor room, but I can
Yes.
check with my team just to see if she's accidentally in a different room.
Yeah, but I really want you all to hear from Len because she's kind of the backbone. We wouldn't be able to do this project without her, because otherwise it would just be us not being able to connect with the community in a way that they understand, and not being able to build a sort of epistemology with Yuuyaraq and Elikut and Western science and having that feedback mechanism. But kind of moving into Rubus chamaemorus in a climate challenge future. So again, this is my background. This slide, please. Sorry, we haven't to juggle all of that. Atsalugpiaq or Rubus chamaemorus has actually historically been seen and present throughout all of Alaska throughout history. So this map here, it actually kind of pinpoints publicly available data where people have put up information on the division of subsistence on their harvest potential or the actual harvest they collected in these individual places. So this is all over Alaska. And in general, when we look at the plant itself, 90% of the cloudberry is underground. And that's like 30 to 60 centimeters, sometimes a little bit less depending on the area and the soil type. But what you see above ground is usually the berry, some of the leaves, and the flowers are also present. And consistently, berries need to be pollinated or like pollinated. So either solitary bees, solitary flies, etc. And that's really important, especially for this plant, because in individual berry patches, you might only have male flowers or completely female flowers. So getting that connection through wind or by hand is very rare. So you have much lower productivity as a result of climate change because you also have landscape alterations that occur. Next slide, please. And this is what that looks like. Coastal erosion is a really big thing. So swaths of land where cloudberries actually used to be able to grow just don't exist anymore. And even in Quinhagak this past summer, there were portions on the coast. They were there one day and gone the next, and they were in culturally important places. And another important fact about cloudberries is that people don't just pick anywhere. They don't pick just where they found berries. They pick them in ancestral lands that are important to the story of their families. So this is sort of a barge that ran aground in the winter. So it's not as relevant, but it is because snowpack is important to salmon berries because you have most of that plant underground. The snowpack and the amount of snow each year also dictates how insulated the plant is and if it's going to survive for the next season. So you don't have good snow, you don't have good berries. And kind of finally, there's additional shrubification that occurs, as well as just sort of permafrost. As permafrost thaws, you kind of get additional water intrusion over time, where previously you may have been able to have salmon berries, and then ultimately you just get shrubs or sedges and grasses in that area. So the land can no longer support cloudberry and sustain cloudberries. Next slide. So it all kind of comes down to a couple things, what we know. There's a lot of variability in berry harvest. There potentially in the future could be mismatch between pollinator emergence and flower emergence, so increased temperature. You might have berries that will come, or the flowers for the berries that will come a little bit earlier than when the pollinators also emerge. And then you also have depletion in the number of berry patches. So as the landscape changes, you have fewer berries. And there's also increased danger associated with picking berries. So areas that people would previously go, they know the land, they know the tundra, they can't necessarily go the same route that they're used to because there's increased danger and water intrusion in those. Current mitigation strategies, people just will travel further to find greater productivity. And this is again, unfortunate because this is a place-based activity, subsistence harvest. Knowing where you get your berries is important to connecting to your ancestors. So it's not a true one-to-one sort of alternative. But then also kind of bringing back a lot of those traditional subsistence management practices. So leaving more berries out in the field that you want to be able to pick and harvest so that you can potentially reseed a certain berry patch that is important to you. And this last one, which isn't really within the realm of this specific project, but it's still important. And throughout Nordic countries, they actually have been collecting different berries. So looking at genetic variation between berries to potentially increase its cultivatable potential. There's been sort of limited success with this because berries kind of exist within a very heterogeneous patch. It's not just berries that are there. There's dozens of other species of plants that coexist within that sustain it. And so kind of going back to these different research questions that we have about technology and the environment and what have we done thus far. So there's been one field season that was last year where we were able to kind of connect a lot of the dots between these different research questions. Again, kind of looking at the Western science perspective, we did drone imagery, which isn't entirely Western science, but we were able to collect thousands of images of different areas in the tundra to begin to develop our harvest indices as well as vegetative indices, but looking at other features of the landscape. And secondarily, looking at leaf spectrometry and berry spectrometry. So when you look at any single object, you see a very specific set of colors. And what that actually translates to on a machine, you can actually have different channels. And each of those channels represent some moniker of plant health. So that's what we kind of end up breaking down there. And it can be related to heavy metals or just individual nitrogen levels or chlorophyll levels, etc. And then we also look at berry and leaf sampling. So we want to be able to estimate the harvest of last year. And we also collected soil and water samples to, again, look at those heavy metal content and foodborne pathogens in all those different sources to be able to trace and track, is our berries safe to eat? And what is that environmental impact there? And finally, kind of looking at traditional knowledge and sociological implications there. My boss, Dr. Fredrickson, she did unstructured interviews throughout the community, and those were recorded all in UPIC for the most part, to be able to look at and assess food agency, but then also having people tell the story of bears within their families, because that can be very different across families within the same village even. We have to go through the next couple. Yeah, right here. Okay. So these things all went to very many different places because there isn't just 4 of us that are working on this project, and it's not just the community of Quinhagak, but we always want to kind of bring back that there's a broader team to support this work. And even though it leaves Quinhagak, it kind of comes back into it. Next slide, please. Through community outreach. Yeah, sorry. Yeah. And then next slide.
Yeah.
Yeah, right here. So these are kind of the beginnings of an output for a lot of the work that we've done. I'm in the process of developing a berry monitoring app so we can input all those harvest estimates at the specific areas that we collected berries and we also collected drone shots from. And then creating static maps that we can also input into that map, or into the app, I should say, wherein we have information about heavy metals and foodborne pathogen risk for each of those sites. So these are just static maps that people can kind of look at. These are where we collected. If you want us to look at more in the future, more sites that is, and more berry patches, we can go out, collect more information, and also have that very easily accessible to the community. The other part that I won't really get into too much, but looking at economic value of the berries and then creating a short documentary in berries in Quinhagak. So that's also kind of going back to what does the community actually want? They want to be able to tell their stories and kind of retain them within the community. So I want to talk a little bit more about drones and collecting that drone imagery and why that's been really fun. So we kind of start off here in image acquisition. So I mentioned that there's workforce development that's occurred within the community. So actually there's like a 19-year-old who's Part 107 licensed who actually did all the drone imagery for this project. And that's where we start. And then I kind of come in and do a lot of processing thereafter where there's image tiling. So you get these massive images of a different site and we kind of break it down into smaller sections. And then I go through and annotate those to identify the berries. And those berries are then kind of pulled out into individual pixel annotations. So you can even see here, there's very slight variations in the coloration of the berries. And all that means we can kind of like break that down into a harvest index because it makes it easier for us to identify berries. So as we collect more, okay, perfect. As we collect more information or more images, I should say, we'd be able to kind of go back through and see what is the actual health of those berries and why are they slightly healthier based on the foliage and everything else. Can we go back?
Yeah.
Yeah. Lynn, welcome, welcome, Lynn. Okay. So I kind of had to start a little bit, but could you talk and give your portion of the presentation? You can hear us.
You're muted, Lynn.
You guys hear me now?
Lynn. Thank you so much. Going through all the technical difficulties.
Yeah, it's every single time. Well, good afternoon, everyone. Thanks for joining us today. My name is Lynn Church. I'm originally from Quinhagak. I live and breathe in my community. I live the subsistence lifestyle. I'm fluent in Yupik, and I'm really fortunate to be working in my hometown because this is a project that does really resides with me because for a long time traditional research has been um, not the best practices in my eyes because when you come to a community, there should be a process flow and a standard where you do research, you come in, you make sure that you have local people that are part of the process. Teach them and train them how to use the technology that you're utilized to find the hypothesis that you're trying to find. Because at the same time, it provides them the skill sets in workforce development, but also give them a chance to understand why you're doing this research in the community. And that's something that I've been shifting within Quinhagak the past 2 years because for a long time, we still live the subsistence lifestyle. And we had fisheries, but there's no more fisheries. And one of the solutions that the corporation came up with is create a subsidiary, become a facilitator for researchers to come in and understand what's going on with our ecosystem. Because for a long time, climate change in rural Alaska, we're always focused on emergency respondness, infrastructure, but there's little data and there's little research on our food sources. Because at the end of the day, when there's a collapse in the economy, we're going to go back to the basics. And it is my duty right now as this generation to collect the data that we need, especially the native plants that we rely on throughout the whole year. And our goal is that we study not just like the economic side, scientific side, but the social side, because subsistence is part of our lifestyle. Even with the advancement of technology, we continue to live the way we do, and we're always grateful for the technology that is there. And one of the ladies was like, it's about time they give us a voice because like, what are we gonna do in the next 10 years with climate change happening? How are we gonna, what are the alternatives? And so this is why we're doing this project. And I want to encourage a lot of research people, like, use a model that we're using in Quinhagak. It's not just writing about a white paper and something you present at conferences. These are real life solutions that are going to help our people, but you as scientists understand what's going on and have data that, not just impact you within your career or within your department, but it's going to help us find solutions for problems that are going to happen within 10 years.
Thank you, Lynn. All right, yeah. It's on forward. Okay, so yeah, once we've kind of collected all those images, and again, this is work that's completed alongside the community, even for image acquisition, but then also when we went on the ground to kind of ground truth all the data that we got from the images. There was a community member who was my field technician, Grace Hunter, who actually helped me pick berries out the cold, rain. There was tons of mosquitoes. We had a lot of fun there. But ultimately, this information kind of gets just dropped down. There's thousands of images, thousands of pixels that we're looking at, but it just kind of becomes a map that is easily accessible for the community to access. So kind of blaze through this little graph here because it's not super important, but the main kind of takeaway here is that food quality measures, they all kind of point to various site-specific uptake patterns, but this isn't really reflected in morphology or explained by other plant presence. So when we collected these berries, we sent them off to different labs to look at heavy metals. We very consistently found that heavy metals at all the sites we collected that unfortunately were above sort of suggested limits for daily intake. But simultaneously, when we look at nutrients, such as ellagic acid, which is an antioxidant and very powerful and very commonly found in sort of native berries and other wild foods. But when we compare it to frozen mixed berries, which is the next closest alternative, there's barely any. There's like double the amount of ellagic acid or the specific antioxidant in Atsalugpiaq or Rubus chamaemorus. Slide.
What do you have? A suspected source for the lead?
Yeah, so that's why we had also tested water and gravel because we know they're gravel. There's been some concern about that, and we didn't. Those sources, they actually didn't come up as high, but we think the underlying soil, so permafrost actually does contain some amounts of heavy metals, and in some areas it can be even higher. So we'd have to do pretty deep assessments of the soil to really get down to the nitty gritty, but being able to rule out the water sources in surrounding areas where the berries are, as well as the gravel that's on the road as potential sources has been pretty good so far. So we just think it's permafrost. Yeah. I'll actually kind of skip past this and get one or two more. Okay, yeah, so the beginning of the documentary, because we also want to be able to tell the stories of the community. And next slide. So when Claire was doing all of her interviews, again, this is Claire, very, very happy there. But she did a lot of interviews in Yuuyaraq with the translator there. And there was a woman, Galgak, and her grandchildren who just kind of told their story very beautifully. And they agreed to be a part of the documentary, which is still in progress. But because it's being translated and all these pieces. But when it comes to this indigenous research and collecting berries specifically and harvesting, they usually go out with like an older member of the community and then a younger person will go and collect berries together. And so we were able to kind of capture that with this family and ultimately kind of make a hurak with them, if you're familiar with that, which is kind of canonically called Eskimo ice cream, where they mix berries with some fat oil or animal fat of some sort, just kind of mix that all together. It can be tasty, but it's sometimes an acquired taste for others. Slide. Yeah, and then that's Galgak again. So it's a beautiful thing, and we hope to kind of be able to release that in the next month. It's a short documentary, will be like 3 to 5 minutes. And finally, I just want to take some time on our side to acknowledge the broader team, Nalaquq, Lynn, and Sean, who were there, the community of Quinhagak, Grace Hunter, who is my field technician, and Brian Jones Jr., who did all of the drone imagery and collection for us there. So thank you. I'll kind of end it right here. Questions? Yeah.
Hi, thank you so much for your presentation and sharing this. I have a couple questions, but I don't want to take up too much space. But I guess my first question is, Mary Hofstetter in Yuuyaraq is doing very similar work in, under their private stewards program. And so I'm curious about how this research initiative is partnering with other research that's going on, that's tribally led, to like look at methodologies and comparing those, and they're also looking at like stratification of the lands. They're not using drones though, so that's kind of my like, who are you partnering with outside the community, and can these methodologies using drones be replicated in other communities where this is an area of concern for their area?
Yeah, so Nalaquq, one of their sort of missions is also to expand their development of the workforce in other areas or like regions throughout the state. So far, we haven't partnered with other tribes beyond the Kangignaurutet tribe, but they want to focus a little bit more on the cultivatable potential. So we want to be able to translate some of the exact methods that we're doing, but these exact methods aren't always the perfect fit for every single community because they may not want to utilize drones in the same manner. But using some of the ground surveys, just collecting berries and doing heavy metal surveys and foodborne pathogen surveys, those are things that we are able to teach and you know, kind of translate that. So yeah, that's part of the work, but it's, you know, you have to build those relationships, and that can take a lot longer than doing some of the work.
Thank you. And then my only other follow-up question is, with the findings that you have for the concentrations in lead, how are you communicating those to the community members without scaring them away from this important cultural and subsistence resource?
Yeah.
But how are you communicating that information to community members, and also saying like it's above regulatory limit, and the interpretation of what regulatory is, who set that, and how that comes into play and actually.
Yeah. So we created like a one-page pamphlet to break all of that information down. And that's kind of like, we have to give that and pass that on to the Nalaquq for them to disseminate in a way that they feel is culturally proper. But we give them the information in a way that makes sense, you know, sort of scientifically, to not scare and say like, there's this huge risk to eat berries that is an important cultural food. So, yeah.
I'd like to add to that. This research became about with the salmon berries is not because Siri and Claire said, "Hey, I got this research idea." It was actually communicated to us by elders and the berry pickers because they wanted to understand what is going on with them, because over the years the harvest stocks fluctuate. 1 year, 2 years ago, we didn't have any kind of salmon berries. We're like, what the heck is going on? And we didn't even have blackberries and even cranberries. And then last year, we were lucky last summer because there was abundance of them. And it does affect, like, the community members say, "Kangignaurutet uksumi kuikan," like when there's a lot of snow in the winter, we'll have a lot of berries. But with climate change happening, fluctuating, where it's cold, no snow, that's when we know that there's not going to be a lot of berries, and we need to either find alternatives, or there's people going all the way from Quinhagak to Tuksuk Bay, and that's like $1,000 round trip. And what they did is they want to understand, like, okay, how is climate change affecting the berries that our current stock is? Not like, oh, because of the weather, but they wanted to see how is the gravel that, you know, we're a gravel road system. We have gravel, and we know there was mines, previous mines, you know, at Aralik, and that's where you excavate some of that stuff. And we want to understand what kind of contamination how are these things affecting our livestock within Quinhagak? And because not only that, it's like the other food resources we have, especially like in our ocean. We have, like, last year, because the water levels in the ocean rising at the higher temperatures, we're getting a lot more reds now because reds like warmer water. And there is a decline of salmon stock. And so, like, every research project we have is interconnected, but we're streamlining the technology that we have to train the local people and understand together in a language that not only you guys understand, but we can interpret to the community. And we are building relationships right now with other projects. So like right now, with the salmon project, we're partnering with Quinhagak, Good News, and Platinum. Those are the villages that we're most familiar with. And every time we do something like this, we try to include them because in our culture, Yuuyaraq, it's about sharing the knowledge and how can we get funding opportunities for them. Because within those 4 villages, a lot of times we're forgotten. We're from the Kuskokwim region where there's not a lot of, you know, economic resources like up north has where they have the oil money. We don't have that type of resources. And a lot of these projects come about is us networking tirelessly through day in and out and be like, hey, we want to understand this, but how do we get connected to the right person? And Claire and Siri heard our voice and they came along, and this is how this project became about. And all these projects that we have continued to be us working with other people and trying to get connected, because a lot of times we don't get the funding we need within the YK Delta. Yes, there's a lot of funding with the YK Delta, but the 4 villages that we're a part of, we don't ever get to be a part of that. And so, like I said, you know, we were lucky to find USDA funding this project, and we'd like to have more funding in that aspect because this kind of stuff is important, and we are going to share with other communities because they need to understand their livestock too.
Thanks,
Thank
Liz.
you. Thank you so much. Here, we're ready for y'all. If you'd like to come up, let me share my screen again. Here we go. If you need to write 340, you guys, yeah.
Oh, it's 347. I don't need to bring it. But, if they want to. Would you mind putting some of the rolling things there? Because I realized we only got.
Yeah, we got 15 minutes.
Yeah, I don't have very much time. So normally, when we work up, we like to do handle activities, but
30 minutes.
there's a volunteer and
30. Yeah, not 15.
do that. And I'd like to show people some of the easiest things to get people engaged. Have time to do this. Plan this time of year. Buds near your area. It's easy group to go to, look for the biggest trees along the Kenai Peninsula, and then look for the babies. Because moose really love cottonwood, you're not gonna find a branch anywhere, 50 feet up, so look for the babies. Or if someone's cutting a tree down, then you can get to that cottonwood.
Could you closer when you're showing things to the video with me?
Oh,
Just because they're over here.
Ow.
This top piece is
The camera.
the camera.
Also from there.
Thank you.
So I'm Jessica Newton, greenhouse coordinator for the Canadian Indian tribe. That was my first job when I was 14. I worked for the greenhouse and garden, and that got me into the career of landscaping and greenhouse work. And so I did that for 27 years and came back to be able to share my knowledge and experience to the youth and elders in the community.
And my immediate name is Asana, and my English name is Tia Holly. I've lived in the Danaina lands for the last 43 years. I've worked for the tribe for about 13 years now. The last 9 as a traditional wellness consultant, which means I get to do a lot of fun stuff. Looking at wellness, connecting people to the programs and activities that the tribe has, and then connecting them to community things, statewide, nationwide, how we can, wherever we can find opportunities for wellness, especially when it's culturally related. I get to try those things out or help hook people up with them. For my hands-on stuff. We do a lot of stuff with plants and food. And it's really popular doing the wild plants. But today, our wonderful Libby back there is gonna take some of these cottonwood buds and put them in a little vial. You can order these online for about 50 cents a piece. One of the easiest things to do, it could be different kinds of plant material, but cottonwood buds fit in there easily when they're tiny like mine. And then you just cap them off with some oil. We have some infused oil. Sorry for the people at home. Because this is one of the best smells, unless you really don't like the way, you either hate it or love it, but 99% of people love it. It's a combination of spruce pitch and cottonwood butter. So for those participating here, you'll have that little gift and another little gift we'll talk about in a little bit. So she can move the scroll forward and I'll give her.
So this is our traditional value wheel. This is DWC, the Denina Wellness Center. And we can do the next slide. Yes, I know she was here, or she's got these first couple of slides.
Oh.
Sorry.
Yeah, and we can just scroll through. I think everybody here knows that, for at least 10,000 years, Alaska Native people have lived off the lands, and not just from the animals, but from the plants. When I teach classes, I have like some really old books, like this 225-year-old book. This guy rants about the pharmacists ripping people off, and that he made this book for women who take care of the household so that they can go out and find the medicinal plants and prepare them for their families to take care of their families. And I'd say that's 225. And it's pretty impressive. It's a pretty big book, lots of information, lots of the same plants that Alaska Natives and American Indians have used over the years. And then I say, but Alaska Native people have been working with these plants for 10,000 years. We just didn't write it down. Yeah. So, and the reason it's lasted so long is because of traditional stewardship practices, and not just of being respectful to the land, but with this idea of sharing, and thinking of others, more than you think of yourself. Our primary target, for lack of a better word right now, to think of when we're doing services through the wellness department, is our elders. And it's a benefit for us, because when we're doing things for elders, it's doing stuff for us. Connecting with elders, I think, is a big one for all Alaska Native cultures. And I think it's something that's missing in a lot of people's lives. I was blessed with being able to go through school where we had an elder in our class. And we all learned at a more respectful, I guess, and more connected way than we would if we didn't have the elder.
So this is the greenhouse, my office. I'm just going to talk about each picture. The Black Beauty tomatoes on the end. Last year I did 14 different varieties of tomatoes, just kind of testing to see what grows the best up here in our greenhouses, and disease resistant and a good producer. I like those ones because they have the same antioxidants as blueberries. Another thing we do is provide vegetables, produce to our elders program. So we have like the cucumbers. They like the English cucumbers because they have like a softer skin, easier to digest, and microgreen. This was collard greens that they requested for New Year's. And this is planting, yes, part of our planting of potluck. And this is, that was hydroponics. So this was last year, the end of the planting of potluck. So we bring the kids in and they do a harvest, and then the next day we have potluck. And so we made salsa and pesto and teas and spices and everything we collected throughout the year. I think down here, we're working with the homeschool kids, and they're just getting at the age where they're going out and applying for jobs, so we're working on work ethic and discussing like different healing plans and respectful harvesting.
And I didn't go through the earlier slide that showed a greenhouse. We started out with one greenhouse on the, what we call a campus, for where the clinic is, tribal courthouse, elders, social services, behavioral health are all in a, area where you can walk from one building to another. And originally we had the greenhouse there, and 30 by 70. It's 30 by 70. And then, the courthouse was gonna get bigger and somebody had broken into the greenhouse to get some of our grow lights in the winter. So we moved it out to the original, location of their gardens, that, Jessica had worked
So
at.
this
Yeah.
land here was where I first worked, it was my very first job when I was 14. And then they finally moved the greenhouses back there, so I'm really excited about that.
And now, and they doubled it, so we have two 30 by 70 foot greenhouses.
So this is my daughter. She works in the greenhouse, but she helps out sometimes. But she was really proud of washing and stacking all the pots. And we do art projects in the greenhouse, so did a little painting there. That was a still life painting where we just step up and paint it. And then we don't like to waste paint, so if it's on the palette, I have them go and paint on all the flower boxes. So they're just a big canvas for everybody. And then as soon as they paint, it's like, it's so peaceful and quiet. Like they're doing other things and they're like, running around screaming. And when they, yeah, it's amazing. And this was tea packing for the elders before potluck. And we also bring our soil and seeds to the school and have them do a little planting there so they can watch them grow at school. And they gave us a little thank you.
Yeah, they have a new school that opened up last year, and I think they just got, the licensing or approval to be a target
Yes.
school, yeah. And we were talking about collaboration and sharing, this was,
That was a potato digging workshop. So the elders participated and youth and all ages. And so whoever participated took home a little 5-pound bag of potatoes and the rest went to elders and Naini, our social services food cache.
we had a cold snap, and so parts of the ground froze, but we still were able to get the potatoes. There were some pretty diligent elders.
Yeah.
Digging through the frozen ground to get the potatoes.
This was another invasive species eradication. So we worked with different departments on kind of pulling out the invasive species, and then we made seed bombs of native plants to kind of replace those bare spots where we ripped out the invasive species. And these are interns that participated.
The tribes have interns that can get paid for working in different departments. Most of them really love working with us in the summertime especially. Because we're outside a lot. And then this is an example of where, that is the campus looking at an aerial view. When I made a map, the employees wanted to help. We've got like 130 employees in that building right there. And they want to participate in the things that we do. A lot of the classes I do, will be there in the lobby. They get interested, but they wanted to participate in this, so I made some little handouts with the location and, went over the identifying that we have, beach peas there that,
Are
you know,
indigenous?
that are indigenous that we want to keep there.
And they look very similar to the
Yeah.
bird vetch.
Yeah, so.
So we have to make sure that you know the difference when you're pulling the weeds
Yeah,
for
yeah,
the invasive species.
yeah. So I said, look for the things that look like anorexic beach peas. And, we teamed up with, the environmental department because they had funds and we didn't, so they were able to buy some supplies that we needed for this group activity. So think about other people, you know, it could be an unexpected, partner.
So we have a new hydroponics unit that just showed up in August. So that's kind of what it looks like before we actually started planting in it. And it was just like a new learning experience for me because I haven't really done hydroponics. So it's like a lot of trial and error. It's ran by a computer app and our internet is very spotty. So you got to change something and you got to wait for it to come back online. So that's, it's pretty fun and clean, but it's just like another, learning step.
And I put this one up here with Lori, I know some of you know our color, the space farmer. I've collected seeds for a long time and I do hand out seeds when I'm doing classes and, I'd given some seeds to my son, Stephen, and he gave them to her and she sprouted them. And then the babies went to Elikut because he was working with the Elikut tribe. And I thought, that just was one of those happy accidents of, a partnership that happened to where I gave her about 25 different types of seeds this last year. And then she's gonna document the best way to propagate them with the hydroponics unit. So that we can, have that knowledge for the tribal use, because we decided it will belong to the tribes here in the state of Alaska. And, a lot of, with the climate change, like 3 years ago, it rained so much. And I know you guys, some of you know, we had the second biggest fire in the country ever. And so for the first couple of years, you see pink for miles and miles and miles. And, when it rained that summer, none of them bloomed. And it's really, kind of a really, big picture of, when you have 300,000 acres of what should be fireweed and there's none, that the, weather change has really affected them. So, that's another reason why we're trying to find ways to propagate our wild plants. That's one of the things. The first reason I did it was because we live in an area where, it's hard for elders to get to any place to harvest things. And the tribe isn't able to go to their traditional lands, for a lot of different reasons, but we're bringing the plants to the people and then they're more nutritious than the foods that you can get at the store. So we're working on a cookbook for people in early recovery using a mix of gardens and wild plants. And, so you gotta be able to get the plants to the people. I think I was hearing earlier, it's like, where can you find this kind of stuff? Yeah.
Last month, so we hold workshops every month, and last month I had the biggest turnout ever. It was like 50 people showed up to make terrariums, and I should have put a cap on that, because I was insane.
Oh my God.
And people saying, I'm so sorry I missed out on your workshop. I'm like, I'm so glad you did. So I'm gonna have to do that again. People love terrariums. So that was the joy of planting. We also do arts and snacks.
Yeah, that one's brilliant.
Whether we're painting or making birds to it. There's all kinds of stuff. We made a pet edition where I grew catnip and we sewed little catnip, toys and.
And then with the interns, some of them work out at the, wildlife refuge. And they always call us to come out and do like fish skin tanning classes or making salves. And then we also, if we can, I was able to, co-teach the field class in Bethel last year for the ethnobotany program. And I've taken the class. So when we do, and I do suggest to people, even if you've got a degree or anything, because you go and you connect with people and you hear about updates, especially in our changing world. And trying to, I hope people can find creative ways to move forward with the cultural activities like this. And Native people are adaptive, humans are adaptive, and we have to do what we can today in this world and bring forward the good from our ancestors.
Compost. So we're working with our fisheries department to try to get the fish scraps, because as of now, they just go back in the ocean. And we're looking to get a big composter where you just put them in there and they comes out compost 2 weeks later. And then just like trying to get food scraps, like landfill should be the last resort. So anything we can do, we get compost from our elders' kitchen. So all that veggie scraps goes to our compost at the greenhouse, and we're trying to work with the schools and all of our different tribal facilities.
And she used to get eggshells from them
Yes.
before they quit buying eggs.
Yeah, because
But
eggs are
like
super
a
expensive.
Ton of eggshells.
So now, we're pushing to get chickens. Upcoming seed planting workshop next month.
I've got some flyers, some examples of flyers. And I've got a handout on some wild seed planting tips for the Kenai Peninsula.
So we'll be planting with good intentions, for the community garden. So we're inviting the community to come in and plant seeds and practice, self-growth and thinking of healing for others when you're planting seeds.
And then the tribe, we've been blessed to have, the Dena'ina Plant Lore book that, Priscilla Russell documented the names and practices and uses of the plants from the Athabascan people around Cook Inlet. The tribe finally had the capacity, because she's always meant it to go to the tribe, but they finally had the capacity to take it in and publish from them, the first publication that'll be out this year. And
80 minutes, I don't know how much
Okay.
slides we have left.
we don't have very many.
Oh, okay. We got
So
like 2
this
more
is a
slides.
gift that our volunteers making you, and like I was saying earlier, if you're getting into plant medicine, and, I do think it's important. One of the things I do, if I'm doing something for more public workshop and for beginners, you know, I focus on things that are abundant. Like you're not gonna kill off all the cottonwood trees, you know, to get cottonwood buds. Dandelions are a good one, fun for kids. They yank the little petals out, throw them in some pancake batter. But I also want to move forward, just how, wonderful our plants are for food and medicine. Cottonwood bud oil was, related to the oil that was in the balm of Gilead. And just with the cottonwood bud and infused in some olive oil, we did rolly balls for the elders. First time we had an abundance of that. And it really helped with their arthritis in their hands. And it was kind of neat because they could come back for refills and, you know, we would just refill their little rolly bottle and, yeah.
Oh, yes. This is our tea that we collected. We collected a bunch of flowers, some indigenous and some from the greenhouse. I did use stevia and anise as a natural sweetener, so you don't have to add sugar.
And it tastes good. It doesn't taste like licorice or have that weird aftertaste of the store bought.
And then we do some art, that's like garden art, painted on rocks and driftwood. And yeah, and
We don't have the rocks, but we do have some tea for you.
Yes, there is tea bags that we packaged. And there are some counting boards that our tribe puts out, and we were featured in that with the hydroponics unit. So if you want to grab a copy of that, so we don't have to bring it back with us, that'd be great.
And we do, and I know I didn't have a slide up there, the tribe, got a grant to help with making, an accessible garden. So how many acres?
I think it's like 3 acres. And there's like ground level beds, and then there's raised beds.
Yeah.
And it's, yes, wheelchair accessible.
And they fenced it in.
Yes, 8-foot fence, keep moves out.
Yes.
So that's exciting. This will be our first year for planting, and so that's part of the community seed planting workshop for this April. month of
Yeah.
April.
Is that at the end of Ames Road or?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, they finally finished the fence
Nice.
and no, it's nice. And then we'll be able to have thoughts for like behavioral health. Can come out and have a plot that they can work with, but we also do work with, the education department, you know. And in the summer they have camps and we'll go out on walks with them. or they will come over to the greenhouse and we'll do things. The planting of potluck is something that, we started a couple years ago.
This will be our 3rd
Um,
year.
Yeah, it'll be our 3rd year. We learned the first year, we made some spices with some of the herbs that the elders and youth planted together. And we had salt, and so they told us the next year, no salt. They told us a little late, and I don't, after the price hike on lemon peel, because it was just ridiculous. You went out to buy a little bottom, to
I've been
replace-
saving my lemon peels ever since.
yeah. Yeah, so, but it means that they're engaged and they're invested when they, we do hand out thank you cards that they can write down suggestions and, and we do encourage people to tell us, is this what you want? Is there something you want that's different?
We do have a year-round greenhouse, so it's heated,
Yeah.
and we put up lights. Yeah.
What kind of seeds did you put in those native seed bombs? Curious.
I'm trying to remember.
There was wild geranium,
Wild,
fireweed, yarrow.
yeah, focused on the flowers. Yeah.
Or the, like, field type.
Yeah, thanks, that, I've got some, fleabane that I got outside of Fairbanks, but it's been growing in my garden and, I think it could become an invasive plant, so we didn't put that in there.
Which one did you put in?
It's a purple fleabane I found outside of Fairbanks to try, let me dig up some, they're like, take as much as. Should have been included, but,
I'm gonna grab those.
Yeah.
They're back.
Put your Silvany in there, Mom? You put the Silvany in there, the wormwood?
we didn't put wormwood in this tea bag, but we will be planting wormwood seeds. And I do, I've always had a lot of wormwood. I do have my own company and I grow wormwood in my greenhouse. I can harvest it about 5 times. The last one I dry, hang, collect the seeds, and I'm more than happy to send people seeds. I didn't write down the seeds that I gave Lori this last year, so, but she usually looks through and she asked our greenhouse coordinators, are Jessica and Jeff, and then any tribe that she's working with, she asks them what seeds, yeah. So I'd love to know the list, but she's the one that's on top of what is actually there, so, yeah. Was there any other questions? I know we zoomed through a lot of information. I do have some handouts, if you want to look at any of them. We do have a calendar. The wellness department also does, tobacco cessation, diabetes prevention, and, we have a gym, and now I'm forgetting somebody.
On the cultural program, well,
Look,
I bet you what wellness is taking.
yeah, well, and for me, I do a lot of work on the traditional plant use. And then we've been doing some work on food security. But the tribe has a lot of departments, and I'd say they're strong right now for the cultural department, the language department. But if you're working with tribes, just call back, because in the past, when, we haven't had consistent funding, I just try to let people know tribes do want to do the best that they can for their people. And these are great ideas, that hopefully can keep moving forward as long as, we have the funding. Part of my work is funded through tobacco cessation. I've done that, but everything that I do is open to the public. We don't advertise it just because, there's only so many of us. And while the greenhouses are wonderful and they grow an immense amount of food and it's a really small location. I don't know how much last year.
The little garden, I think it was maybe 30 by 100. That was outside. And then the greenhouses are 30 by 70.
Do you know how much produce?
Oh,
you guys-
it was over 1,200 pounds
Yeah,
for the year.
yeah, for both greenhouses.
Yeah.
Yeah,
I think so.
yeah, we have a boy greenhouse and a girl greenhouse. The white greenhouse gets these giant tomato trees. Yeah, it's like a jungle in there, yeah. I think, well, we'll have the gifts back there. Thank you for having us. I know my son is coming up next, so we'll try to be quiet when we hand out the gifts.
Nice.
We
Yeah.
have, 15, right? Yes.
Yeah.
We have like 1 minute for transition. Let me pull up your slides.
I got your picture on the.
What she said. Sorry, I'm gonna take you out.
Well, back there. Oh. Yeah, if you guys want to, you guys want to? You want?
Okay, without it.
What you guys want? I can talk with nothing or everything. Ooh, yeah. Oh,
You can tell us the podium. Just be careful of this one cord here. You want to pass one? I think would you like those? You want to make you one?
What's that?
That cottonwood oil.
Oh. Yeah. Max also. No, we're gonna drag her. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. We're good.
I can also.
Yeah, bring it there.
More chairs.
That one, this side. All right. Well, girls on the side, boys on the side. All right.
Now ready? Hey, we're getting ready to start our next session. Just a housekeeping reminder that we are using an owl, so as much fun as this exercise activity in the back is, if you are doing it, just please be quiet when you go over and make your little essence. We will also have a break at 4:45, so if it's okay, you want to leave all the materials out, maybe people can continue to make their items during the break, that's okay. Perfect. So yeah, our little owl, the video will follow whoever's speaking. So just, be prepared for that. And then for folks, if you have questions, just make sure to speak up because I don't have microphones to pass, especially for this back row here. So project, and for our virtual folks, if you can't hear a question, just let me know and I can type it into the chat as well, if you're having trouble hearing. Okay.
All right, so everybody look at the camera and smile. Like we do. My name is Stephen Hawley, and we are the Last Resistance Farms program. We are a partnership of different entities that have come together to be able to help folks either establish their gardens or their farms or expand it. We're community driven. So when we go into an area, we ask what folks want, what they're looking to do, what they need, and we look to service that. So we are, do I have a clicker?
I don't have a clicker, but if you want to give me like a head nod
Alright.
or a point or just slide.
So as you can see, we have our logo, which is a medicine bag with fiddlehead fern and and a kale coming out of this. Holly Nordlum, she made this, if you know that name. All of our program is by people that we know, by folks that are skilled inside of their area, and we brought them into the fold and been asking them to show their greatness inside of our program. So Holly Nordlum, she put that together. And then you'll notice my mom with one of the elders. So that the Nina plant lore book, she was one of the ladies in there. And one thing, so when we first started the program, we went out to my people's area. And when we first went out there, I warned the crew. The meaner they are to you, the more they like you, and just get ready to be bossed around by a whole bunch of bossy Canadian women. We'll get the job done, no problem. Sure enough, we went over to Iliamna area, then Dalton, New Halen, Iliamna, Pokenoy, Pedro Bay, people from my language, from Denena. And we went all over the place just helping out with gardens. And from there, we also got a chance to see Liz, her name's Elizabeth Beluda, and she has medicine in her garden. She has, regular veggies, but then she has stuff that she went and got out from the land. So we are working with both new garden variety as well as our traditional garden variety. And we put this together to be the Alaska Resilience Farms program. So to go through this, we really want to talk about the value system that we created through action. So we started off our program with a potlatch, downtown Anchorage. I mean, so a lot of this program, I got a Denena dance group, and I just put the kids to work. I mean, I'm stuck with them, so they're stuck with me. And so we fed hundreds of people. The mayor helped us out because we served moose meat to the public, which is a brand new law. They helped us out to actually access that right and do it legally, because we would have done it anyway. But I mean, so we had a great deal of support from folks, but we've always been community. This is how we get our job done. So if you want to go to the next one. So we are a conglomeration of different entities, and we are the founding effort. We have some new folks on that you may recognize, but originally we started out with native village, Elikut. That's one of my villages that I'm from. I'm born in Paonic and adopted into Elikut and raised with the Kangingnaurutet. So I'm an inland Indian. And so Elikut, a long time ago, we were talking about how do we get all these kids working together in a safe way and learning our culture. And when we started, looking at gardening as a way to be able to feed our people, to get the kids to be feeding our people, to get people to be educating our youth and educating each other through normal community interaction. I mean, it sounds cool, but how do you actually do it? Well, the garden has so many pieces of subject to talk about, from the soils to the plants to caring for the plants, to harvesting them, to how you distribute them, what the plants actually do for us. Because I mean, in our tradition, we don't call them food. We don't call plants and animals food. It's very disrespectful. They are beings that sustain us. They make us strong. And so a big part of our program is to be able to honor that. That's why we started out with a potlatch. We gave out so much food and gifts just to do it. Start our program. But we are the original ones making space for this agricultural movement. And then we also got a few more people jumped on. But all of this is thanks to ACF. They came out with the money, with the actual administration to actually get us to collaborate, be able to be agile, because I mean, a lot of folks have been trying to figure out how to get agriculture into the villages, and I've been doing this a long time. And we need this agility to really establish a set rate of practices and rates of pay that we can benefit people to go out there, that we can market how much services we can get in what budget. And ACF, Chanan, thank you. Chicken. So with that, we've been working with APU because I've been educating folks, kind of on a guerrilla style, just get information here, get information there. But APU, man, they are set to educate folks. And so we do have, more than a few APU folks here. There was more. But Anna Louise, she's been coming out with us, on what we call our road show when we'll go out to the villages, as well as helping to support folks when they come into Anchorage and we get them in seats, listening to the information that we're presenting and getting them accustomed to it in a way that they find relevant, in a way that they're comfortable with. So Anna Louise is one of our original founding members within APU, and is a great asset to our effort.
Thanks, Stephen. I could talk a little bit more on APU's position with Alaska Resilience Farms. So Alaska Pacific University has two campuses in person located in South Central Alaska. Main campus being in Anchorage and the Kellogg campus that's located in Palmer. The Kellogg campus houses the Spring Creek Farm, where we have an agriculture education coordinator who's joining us here today, as long as our farm manager. Shout out to you guys. You guys are awesome. And so with the Alaska Resilience Farms, we host knowledge exchanges that are free and open to the community. And we try to do at least 3 or 4 of these in a year. The knowledge exchanges topics are kind of based on what you're doing throughout the season with your garden, and past topics we posted this past year are soil health and soil testing, composting and vermiculture, and canning and fermentation. So throughout the season, you're checking in with us, you're asking us questions like, hey, my soil isn't doing so great for this plant, and we could be your point of contact to make sure that you're getting that harvest at the end of the year.
Yeah, so we're a lot of access to a lot of technical information in a very accessible manner. So I mean, getting folks butts in seats and boots on the ground, real simple. I mean, but what each plant needs ain't as simple. So working with APU and the farm, getting access to some of the brilliant minds that they have within their ranks really helps our participants out. Just getting them the information that they need and getting them onto a track, onto a pathway of education that, we can start out with community workshops. It can also go into a full-on degree. I mean, they can do a lot with the team that we have. I mean, if we're just trying to go into starting up a garden, or if they're actually trying to get a degree within the agricultural field, within this team, we make it accessible, we make it easy just to ask questions. So, a lot of this idea came from, because I got all these kids. So 15 years ago, I got this dance group, right? And it was 4 elders, 20 kids, and 2 moms. It was a lot. I didn't sign up for any of this. I'm a landsman by profession, so I work with folks to enact contracts that give them developments on their acreage as they're looking to see fit. Teaching kids was not within my training or my expectations. But they're my kids. These are my people. These are my next generation. What kind of guy would I be if I didn't, help them out to learn our ways? And so one of the things about learning our ways is we've always been stewards of the land. Always, always, always. We also live in the most occupied area of Alaska. So these kids have some challenges that, people shouldn't be dealing with. So a safe environment to learn, that's always been in what we're looking for. We've occupied abandoned buildings, parks, parking lots. We used to rent space out of North Bay Mall, which was too dangerous. We've done community buildings for condos, inside the condos, inside apartments, houses, every which way but loose. Like we've hustled to try to get a safe place. And then see the change when I was talking with one of the folks that used to run it, Ryan Witten, for anybody y'all know that name. Man, I would just see his operations and safe insurance. Got people to even educate them. They got supervision. They got all these trainers. They got all this stuff just to keep these kids learning and growing. So we would always just talk about it, just always like, how do we get these, stuff? Cause I mean, most of my kids, like, a lot of my kids, like, you'll see them on the streets, like, in Anchorage, like, like, those are my kids, like, those, like, not all of them, like, they don't want, I don't want all of them, but a lot, so like, a good chunk of them, like, and like, how do I get space for them to be, you know, their own selves, where they can actually interact in a safe environment, go towards certification, see the change, and their operations is a great opportunity for them. And they have been a great partner for us to be able to get people to focus on teach the kids in a way that's effective with the technical information, safe, and let these kids have fun. Like, they're so annoying when they're not having fun. Like, and you gotta feed them. Like, you have to feed them. They are horrible without food. So like I said, like, we started out with me and the old lands director, Mark Lamoureux, we were walking around on the field and we were trying to figure out about this idea about a garden. And how do we get that going into an area where we're fishers, we're hunters, we're not farmers. But we always worked on the land. We always taught our kids. We've always listened to our elders. We've always been a community. So that's how we approached it. We started bringing in, I always say it's the bossy aunties and child labor is how we've always done things. You get the aunties and the moms to yell at the kids on what they're supposed to be doing, and the kids are doing it. So, not that hard. So, getting the kids to, I mean, it's not nothing showy. It's some days we're just digging a hole. But I mean, we're together over there sweating, just digging a hole together, just joking around. I mean, that's how we keep it together. We do it together. We actually do our activities, joking around, giving each other a hard time, or like, we'll just conversate. And I'll ask them, they'll tell me about their day. And I don't even listen to that unless we're working. So it's like the perfect time to bond. Like, I mean, the kids, I don't want them around all the time, but when we're working, yes, I do. Like, and we are being a tribe. We're actually being the next generation coming together, teaching each other, working together. It's not that hard. It's dig a hole together.
Community.
Yes, exactly. It's actually, it's a lot of fun. I mean, they're actually really annoying, but when we're working together, they're really fun. So our newest partners, as you can see, we have some folks you may recognize. And we want to start out with Allie over here with the Quick Archipelago Leadership Institute. This was actually a big part of what became our, because when
I'm gonna start.
sorry. Yeah, you're looking at me, he's like, yeah, and I'm like, yeah. So Callie, you know what I meant. Callie, before Max took over being the boss, I seen Robbie Townsend Beno scaring everybody into behaving. Like, I mean, everybody's pretty cool. I mean, we're all farmers. We just hang out. We just do stuff. But when Robbie was around, like, everybody's all of a sudden getting up more proper and being more specific and, you know, being more direct, and it's moving a lot longer. Like, I know what this is. This is a scary auntie. I know exactly what this dynamic is. And from there, we've just been trying to figure out ways that we can support the local champion to be able to be the one that directs their people on what the activities are needed for a successful operation in gardening. So if you want to talk a little bit about, yeah, you want to do the next one? No, I was getting high then, but they're not here. There we go. There we go.
Yeah, so I guess just to give a little background, Cali is the Kodiak Archipelago Leadership Institute. It's a community-based nonprofit here in Kodiak. And we support the rural communities all around the island, about 6 communities around Kodiak, and work with some of the tribes here in town as well. And out of this support, Atsalugpiaq was born, and that's a collective of farms in the rural communities around the island to increase local food production. So I'm the Sustainable Food Systems Catalyst, and I get to help all the communities with anything from soil farming to hydroponics to sea gardening and mariculture, as we're getting into that. So, I guess the question Steven gave to me is how does Cali get multiple areas to learn, work, and feed their people? I gave a little intro on Elikut grown in a panel earlier today, but really the core of it is just creating a farming family, as we call it. And it's been going on for about 8 years now, 8 or 9 years. So it takes time. And we meet every month virtually and have webinars together, and we get together in person for workshops. Do site visits off island, on island, bringing technical assistance to the communities. So when Steven asked about being a part of our Alaska Resilience Farm Network, I kind of envisioned it as Elikut grown, but on a statewide level. So that similar network of people working around Alaska and in remote locations, rural communities to grow food, and just building that support network out there. Because the more you have to just answer questions or just get some feedback on, or just have that support, it really goes a long way. So that's a little background on Cali and Elikut grown, and it's been really successful just building that community network. And we still have a lot of work to do to increase production, but it's building momentum each season and each year. So happy to be here and a part of ARC now. Got to attend the annual meeting on January 8th.
Yeah.
As I was flying home. Coming back, I'm originally from Colorado, so I was coming back up to Kodiak, and they were getting together and got to meet the team. And it's a cool group of growers and people, so yeah.
Rock on. Do we go back actually? There we go.
Yeah, so I'm Allie Toloff. I am from Seward. I was raised there. My family's from there. I'm a member of the Quinhagak Native tribe there, and I work for Yuuyaraq Regional Resources Commission. So we are an intertribal consortium supporting the 7 Native tribes within the Yuuyaraq region. So what I do is I work in Seward, and we have a 40-foot grow conics, hydroponics, and we have 2 hydroponic cabinets. We just moved one of them into the elementary school. So just this last week. That's exciting. I've been able to work with the kids and kind of show them how to put the little plants in the pods. And yeah, so all of the food from these hydroponic units goes to the tribal members, and then the kids at the school. And yeah, ARC is us. I'm super excited to be a part of it. I'm hoping that they can come down to Seward and come and check out our tribe. We have some little 5-gallon buckets where we're growing doing some soil farming, and hoping that they can come and show us what they know and do a little bit of knowledge exchange. Yeah. And then the question, how does CERC view agriculture and Elikut culture? So the way that I view that is, I view Elikut culture as resiliency. And I've seen that through the Elikut people experiencing like the oil spill and how it devastated their beaches, and they couldn't harvest like they did before. And then also with the earthquake and just their strength, and then also adapting to the changing times. And I mean, for me, coming into this space has been really amazing, because I would just go to our Safeway and see all of these sad looking vegetables, and I'm like, what can I do about this? And then I felt so lucky to become a part of the hydroponic world, and we can just grow year round. And I think that's a beautiful thing, to be able to provide our people with year round vegetables. So, yeah.
And provided for our people, I mean, it's a beautiful experience, and that was a big thing about why we do this. I mean, it's an experience that you can't really teach, but I mean, you can feel. I mean, you can teach the technical side of actually creating more production, but when you actually give somebody what you grew or what your gift is to them, and you actually receive that and that thankfulness from them, that, you know, like when my mom was talking about when we harvest, when we say chicken, we give thanks to the land. You know, I mean, that's what we're trying to put inside of our program, where, I mean, it seems like it'd be contrary to what the budget allows for. But described right, it fits right into the budget. It has its own line item. It's called outreach, marketing. I mean, it's all these things that we're able to put into our program and make sure that, you know, we're staying in line with our culture. So agriculture can be used in a way that's contrary to our culture with the use of different chemicals and herbicides and pesticides, but if we actually work the land and do the work, we can do it within our own value system. And there's one other group, this Central Council of Kangingnaurutet Tribes of Alaska. She actually just jumped on the plane, or else you would have Amy Erfling right here with us, and she would have told you about the things that they got going on. But there's a big part of, so on my people, the Dena'ina people, we have a strong connection and relations to Southeast. And it's, my first mentor was from Southeast, from Juneau or Ketchikan, I mean. And they are full of the history of agriculture. We're gonna get some of those plinkett potatoes. If you're around some Haida folks, they'll call it Haida potatoes, so just be careful with that. But we are going to make sure to work with our relatives and make sure that the culture is in line with the history that we've always had for feeding our people. But we've also been growing stuff forever. So plinkett potato is a direct evidence of that practice. Originally, those potatoes come from by the Andes Mountains on the Chilean side, down in South America, and then they got traded and bartered until they're up here. So I mean, we've always had agriculture up here, but it hasn't really been broadcasted to the point where people really readily know that. So part of what ARP is doing, yes, we are promoting to ourselves, you know, this idea of working together. We're also is that 5 minutes Indian time or is that?
We do have a break right after this, if you want to go in.
All right,
We have a
cool.
little question.
All right, cool. Y'all heard that? All right, so we better get into our 10-minute video then, so. Thank you, NRCS Novo. Without them, we would be nowhere. I mean, we've been able to use federal funds and private foundational funds to be able to talk with folks. And it's just showing them the results that we've been creating with their support, and they love it. So thank you, thank you, thank you. And this is when we were building the garden over at downtown at the old Indian Hospital site. See these are my kids. It's where most of us were born, like if we're native. And my kids, I drag them around and they'd be shoveling stuff, but they love it because at the end of the day, we're helping our people. So next. And launch. It's embedded in there. Uh-oh. Sorry. Huh?
Since we're running to the end of our time.
Well, if you look it up.
You could like get emails.
Yeah, yes, please, we can get your email and send it to you. So our next, if you want to go to the next slide. We are pursuing support to start sacred groves. So this is the development of a food forest or garden in a way that's more interactive with the user. So what we have here is my group at the Calypso Farm. One of our youth, younger than him, passed away. He was 9 years old from COVID. I mean, we had a potlatch for him up in Fairbanks, but man, like it hurt. Susan over at Calypso, she said, "Oh, you guys are in Fairbanks, come to the farm." And see right there, I brought the kids and like instantly like that, just smiling, just happy. I mean, they're like, man, you don't know, it hurt a lot to lose one of ours. But then when we came out here, this kid right here, he'd been on the he'd been there before and like he remembered everything that she told him about the rules about working with the bees, about the goats, about how you're supposed to be around the plants. Like these kids, they learn it if you get it in their head just from one experience. And this sacred grove is teaching us that a site, it can be more than just an area of producing plant goods, of producing what you're going to eat. I mean, just the experience of being there together, it's healing. And so we found that some folks are trying to fund this sort of effort, and they call it Sacred Groves. And it is a beautiful design and use of space. So we are looking to build up our support for that. The youngest group the youngest one in my group is right there in her stomach right now, but they're already born. So she's 10 weeks old now. These kids are gonna grow. They're not gonna know what it's like to not have their culture. They're gonna have their culture with more. And it's gonna be in an area where they can actually interact with each other and be with the land. So,
For anybody that would like to watch the video, it's really a beautiful video made. It's a short documentary, 10 minutes, about their roadshows to villages. And it's just on the homepage of AlaskaResilienceFarms.org. It is wonderful.
Is this it here?
Yes.
Oh.
So I'll watch Max if he goes out too. Next year. No, thank you, Max. He's got his next workshop he's gotta go to.
Not independent, not dependent. Meaning that they rely on each other and they're successful together. So we all do work together, we all do meet each other. And it's become this partnership called the Afterwards Business Partnership. Showcase. People. And it's only through the animals, the plants giving themselves to us that we're able to stay healthy. So this program started with the ceremony to show that.
My name is Marcialis. I am the campus at University, and we have Spring Farm as part of our. My name is Alex Wilson, and I am the Youth Agriculture Education Coordinator here. Here on Spring Farm, there's education opportunities that are happening. There are, we're physically adding to the amount of food that's locally grown here in Alaska.
My name is Ben Slim. I'm the farm manager. My name is Mark Kimber. I am the ETCD farm manager. And that so long that it's part of it. And I'd love to grow things. If you give me a challenge, figure out how to be happy in an environment.
My name is Paul Murphy. I work here at Alaska Seeds of Change, and I've been really blessed to work here for 5 years now.
My name is Sarah Nalaquq. I'm really passionate about what we do, why we do it, and what brought me here is food. Working in the ag industry felt really nice. Felt like I was fulfilling purpose. I was participating in Feeding Alaska, and to add more value, helping transition age youth has been like gold.
So the mission of the Seed of Change is to serve youth ages 13 to 23.
We help them to build up their skills, to build the rest, and to support them where they're at. So we do all that with growing food because it's a really nice parallel to healthy lives without having healthy food in our lives. There are 4 days of food in Alaska. Like if something was to happen, so just like baseline for all Alaskans, if there are only 4 days of food in the grocery store, it's concerning. I think for me, what I noticed with my own family was during the pandemic, just how scarce food became. And then extrapolating on that is like our neighbors who are in vulnerable areas of Alaska, food was scarce for us to get in a city. How much more challenging is it for like my friends and neighbors and colleagues who live in rural cities and communities and villages off of some large.
That's really important for, especially in the situation of climate change, COVID situation where you get stuff like that. People really do need to have at least a little bit of sustainability in their backyards. Thinking about food security and resilience for that, having multiple sources and control over that.
Alaska Resilience Farms is founded on partnership.
Partnership is to have these knowledge exchanges for folks who know how to garden, and also invited folks who don't know how to garden but want to learn.
Our goal is to share knowledge, learn, and disseminate information so that people can bolster their existing garden projects or start new projects. And I say garden, but in truth, we really just care about the excellent ways that people engage with their environment, whether that is through subsistence harvest, foraging, or starting up the garden.
We've got a chance to host workshops, inviting people from all over Alaska to come in and learn little bits about different topics. And then some of our team has also gone out in the community and worked in different villages to help them start and continue their garden projects.
Did some trips with the folks out into the Yuuyaraq region, and it was awesome. Workshop, which is kind of broke down the garden to how to ferment stuff, kind of prepare for the winter and how to store things like that. So they kind of go from the very beginning, how to plan your garden, all the way through to the end of it, how to preserve your stuff for winter harvest or winter need and such. So it's a really good group to work with. A lot of knowledge. In all of those workshop settings, people have left with just excitement and curiosity. Big things for my part in art is to offer folks the same level of care that I've offered mining in art. What we're doing here in Wisdom is also what I'm offering to share with what we learned about process of growing food, feed our people. For the elders, caring for the aunts and uncles, caring for the moms and dads, caring for those that come together to make the garden successful.
One of the these folks is that we can be a part of connecting people all around Alaska.
I think that some of our goals for the future for the Alaska Resilience Smart Project is to keep expanding our network of people that are growing food and able to exchange information about how they're growing food with each other. The bigger that becomes, the stronger it becomes, it's growing experience are brought to the table. Resilient farms, I think, is going to be a great thing for the future to teach folks to bring this knowledge to as many people as we can.
Thank you. Please stay connected. We're a program for you all. So if you see us doing anything, feel free to jump on in and, be a part of what we're doing. Culture, agriculture, there's space for you. Chicken.